ones that had 5 points or less in our matrix. Just to show the overall idea, this of course would have to be blown up several times so you could read it, but that's the matrix that's in the plan that shows those ratings. And then once again, here's our map. And then the concluding step here was the commission had a public hearing on this. It was an 8-0 vote to recommend approval of the plan to you. So I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
There any? Yep, Nick.
Mr. Teddy, I appreciate it. I sent a couple of questions out, and I heard back from you and also from Mr. Creech, and those were helpful. One of the things that I asked about was prioritization of which sidewalks will be done when. So, and you responded that there are the two priorities, but beyond that, there's not a prioritization within those two priority areas. With that in mind, how is it determined that which sidewalk projects will be undertaken in a given year?
I think each year as the CIP is developed, there's an internal discussion of that, and probably based on what's timely to do in that period of time, not only the particular capital improvement program year, but that 3 to 5 year window. This year's capital improvement program has both. They have the current year, and then they have going out as far as 5 years for delivering sidewalks. I will add that the Disabilities Commission, their comment was they didn't recommend any particular changes to this list. However, they did express an interest in being involved in the prioritization. So that might be a thought going into the capital improvement cycle to consult with them once again and get their input on that.
So input from someone like Disabilities or perhaps another commission that would have an interest, would have an impact on that kind of decision?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Any other council questions? Yes, Pat.
I have a question about, my first question, I have like three. The cost per foot is a linear foot for a 5 foot wide sidewalk?
Yes, generally, and there's a few where you might have noticed we had 6 foot, and that's when the sidewalk's going to go behind a curb. The standard is 6 foot.
And as far as the discussion about matching or going 50-50 on sidewalk repairs for residential sidewalks as well as the downtown area, we had some conversation about that, and I understand the way this master plan is defined, it's not intended to include that, but would that require us to have a separate master plan for the repair of sidewalks if we wanted to expand the 50-50 program?
I don't know if you want to take that step or if you just want to have a process where individuals can make requests and have those requests evaluated. I don't know what would work best in that. That's an example where the property owner has some skin in the game, so it's very important to have a direct discussion with property owners, I would think.
Would that look something like the private common collector elimination process where
you'd rate?
Well, you'd petition the city to see if there was funding available?
Yeah, I think Public Works is going to have to manage that part of it, yeah.
Thank you.
Roy, did you have a question?
How would one get a sidewalk that they think that will go great, that meets the requirements of prioritization onto this program? Because I think that Ballinger Lane that connects two major roads, it has no sidewalks on either side. It's heavily, a lot of pedestrians walk up and down that road. It's on a bus route, CBDG funds, all of it. It meets a lot of the requirements, yet it's not on the sidewalk improvement program.
Yeah, that could be a council request that the Bike and Pedestrian Commission look at that. When they've done that process in the past, and council persons have asked them to do just that, they've run it through that scoring matrix that you just referred to. They'll see how it scores out, and then they'll come back with a recommendation either to add it or not add it.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, you had a question?
Yeah, so the cost here, the $316, when we get requests for sidewalk variances and we talk about payment in lieu, that's a different number, isn't it?
Sure is, yeah, and that came up during the planning and zoning hearing. That was one of the questions, is why the difference. I think the difference is the sources of the data. We had an engineer that worked here, doesn't work here any longer, but they did originally look at about 40 master plan sidewalks on a very preliminary basis and gave us estimates that were generally on the order of 100 running foot, and this is a number of years ago. And so what we've done is we've just brought those estimates forward and used an inflation factor to increase the amount. And then they basically staff applied a representative figure in each of those priority categories to do the new ones. So the variance number, on the other hand, the last 2 years, that's real numbers. That's what it's cost the last 2 years to build sidewalks. So that's a rolling average. I think 64 was the last one reported to you, so quite a bit lower. I know they just wanted to be very conservative without doing what I'd call preliminary engineering for this plan, and that's why you got those very conservative figures. Sometimes they're replacing driveway approaches, sometimes they're removing utility poles and relocating them, sometimes they're building drainage structures, retaining walls, acquiring temporary construction easements in these standalone projects. So I think there's just a desire to be cautious.
It just makes me wonder if we're, not asking enough on the payment in lieu, because that winds up being a city-built sidewalk, a city project.
Right.
Or we're putting unreasonable estimates out there because we wind up having to make funding and budget allocation decisions based on, what your plan is here. And, I get that you're never going to be, you don't know what the cost is going to be 10 years from now, but we need to be realistic in what we might be able to plan for.
Appreciate the comment.
So I do appreciate also having some of the questions answered, and I know there were some I had in here about, for instance, the business loop and the discussion about how the business loop will fund them. So do you want to offer up what is the correction? Because they show up in red on this.
Yes. I didn't know if it showed up. Yeah, it shows up here. Of course, this is the shrunken version, but there's 3 projects here that are color-coded red, and then there's a footnote that explains that those are Business Loop 70 sidewalks. And the note basically says it's assumed that those are going to be built by the Loop CID. Well, they had a funding source that evidently, due to veto, has gone away. So we think it would, and it wasn't the case when this was in preparation, but we think it would be appropriate to just eliminate the footnote and then also the red color coding. And then we'd leave aside the question of where the funds specifically come from. Because again, the master plan says the city's going to be building these or paying for these.
And that's my follow-up question, was that we have a number, besides just that one, there's a few other ones on Range Line that are MoDOT managed roads. And so I want to make sure that I'm understanding this. They're MoDOT roads, but MoDOT does not historically do sidewalks, creation of sidewalks. Is that correct?
I would say that's generally the case. They have done some Americans with Disabilities Act transition plan work to rehabilitate existing. You remember that big project over a summer on Providence Road where they were tearing out and redoing some ramps and things, and they built a new ramp. So I'm aware of that. But yeah, a lot of times they want the local jurisdiction to take responsibility for sidewalks.
Okay.
It's in my experience.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes, Pat.
I recall, and it was Jimmy Gruender who brought it to my attention that sometime during COVID, he was excited that they had gotten matching money, and I thought it was from MoDOT to put sidewalks along Business Loop. Is that your understanding as well?
So I think it was that the governor vetoed that funding line that was in for part of their budget. But I am aware that, I do understand that staff is working with the Business Loop to go for a large grant to help with not just the sidewalks, but some improvements. But yeah, the governor vetoed that line of the budget.
But MoDOT had put that into their budget, and because
Correct.
they were quite excited about that. Yes, and I know that the Business Loop property owners are concerned, given that with the location of the former VFW building along Ashley Street, that there would be an uptick in pedestrian traffic down there. And so does that does the acquisition of the VFW building move those particular sidewalk projects up in priority?
See, what we did for pedestrian generator, I think, would definitely be the category you would add. So that might have an impact.
So Pat, we might, at the end, similar to what Roy will probably do, is ask for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission to look at the addition of sidewalks for
So I
the
would,
sidewalk master plan.
since Deputy City Manager Mike Griggs is already meeting with them to talk about their concerns, I would think we should ask them exactly what they would like to ask for, because they are already in discussion on that.
But there's not currently a sidewalk plan for right there, right? Not in this plan for the area you're talking about.
Right, we don't have it going quite that far, I
No.
believe, so get to the map.
Okay.
And they've brought that concern forward in most of the conversations that I've had with them about the location of the VFW as the new room at the inn.
Actually, we do have number 6 right here.
Thank you. So it is on the list.
Yeah,
Great,
it's
thank
on
you.
Yeah.
All right, any other council questions before I open up our public hearing? Oh, hi, Tim.
I just wanted to mention, you were asking about MoDOT, and I'm aware that in our CIP too, there's some MoDOT funding, I think, that's being contributed at the far end of North Scott, where we have that sharp curve. I don't know if that's because it's a safety issue for them, but I did notice that's how some of the funding in our CIP entry is broken out.
Okay,
There's a share of MoDOT in there, and it's a sidewalk project.
thank you. Any other council questions before? Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing. Would anyone from the public wish to speak on the sidewalk master plan? I will make note that this is just a hearing on the plan, and council will not be voting tonight.
Hi, I'm Denny Perez. I'm just curious, just for clarification. So once these are built, whose responsibility is it for maintenance and repair?
You can direct the question, so,
Oh.
yes, and then I'll write it down and then answer it. Thank you.
Oh.
It's the property owner, but I'm gonna try not to.
Okay, so it is up to the property owner. So if it's up to the property owner, wouldn't that kind of set us up for failure? Because I'm noticing a lot of property owners, one, don't even know that they're in charge of maintenance for sidewalks, or they're not going to care about the sidewalks in general. So my comment, I guess, is if we're going to spend money on making sidewalks, then we better put in systems in place to make sure these sidewalks stay maintained, because it doesn't take long for weather and tear to make these sidewalks and plus nature and all that unusable. And I don't think it should be on the burden of people who already have so much burden, especially in inequitable neighborhoods. So that's a comment I wanted to put on there.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on the sidewalk master plan?
Barbara Jefferson, Ward 1. Okay, good enough. So that is my concern also. When I looked over this list, I was thinking about how much involvement has been put to reach out to the landowners, and are they aware of what they might be responsible for? There was another. I also noticed that there's not very many on here on this list that are really on a bus route. I'm all for sidewalks. We do need sidewalks, but when I think about some of the sidewalks, and there's only a few sidewalks located for Ward 1 on this list, I think about the areas and how narrow the streets are anyway. And then I guess you're going to have to put the width of the sidewalk according to code for these days. That's really going to be taking up a lot of property, is what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on the sidewalk master plan?
Hello, I'm Lawrence Simonson with Local Motion. Interesting conversation about MoDOT today. I had a meeting with MoDOT leadership today, and they, I think, are changing their tune. So hopefully soon they can get them to pay for some sidewalks. They said they wish they could get their engineers to design them into the design. So I reviewed the sidewalk master plan. I'm very familiar with the sidewalk master plan. I've been familiar with it since well before 2013. I want to start by saying great job to the city staff. Tim and his staff did a fantastic job, I think, with this master plan. I think it's an exemplary plan. The process they go through in finding the information and determining what the priorities are is wonderful. I think they do a great job of connecting with the commissions. So great job to the Bike Ped Commission, great job to Disabilities Commission, PTAC, and as well as Planning and Zoning. I also really love the prioritization matrix that is developed with this plan. I think it's a very objective way to determine what our priorities are and what we should be focusing our tax dollars on. It's something very similar that we've been discussing in a policy called Livable Streets, if you haven't heard about it yet. That being said, Columbia prides itself on being a very walkable, active community. And I think I would like to encourage the city, the council, to continue to look at ways in which we can speed up the process for having these sidewalks built and developed. Currently, the last number I heard from city staff was based on the number of sidewalks total, so sidewalks that aren't included in this master plan total. At the rate we are building out sidewalks, it would take us 300 years to build out the sidewalks. So having that pride in our community of being a livable, walkable place, I think this is something that we should continue to prioritize and finding ways to speed up the process. For instance, if we were to only build in the next CIP only the priority 1 sidewalks, that comes to about a little less than $6 million. If we only did the priority 1s on this current master plan, that's only about 3 miles of sidewalk. That's very little sidewalk. If we look at the current CIP that we are working through right now, there were 2 roads in that CIP that each were a mile long. So 2 miles of roadway that were just being widened. Not necessarily a new road, but just being widened. The totals for those 2 roads came to around $24 million. If in the next CIP, we said, hey, we're going to go ahead and just do all the priority 1s and priority 2s in our master plan, we would complete all of them at that cost of $24 million that was given to us by city staff. I also think that would be very popular because every single neighborhood meeting I attend, sidewalks is the #1 thing that is brought up. We want better sidewalks. We want more sidewalks. So it's a very popular thing. It's something we pride on. Great job, city staff. I encourage you all to continue to look at ways for us to speed up the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on the proposed sidewalk master plan? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Do we have any council comments? Remember, we're not voting tonight. This is just our time, and then we will have this back on our next meeting's agenda. Nick, yes?
I just want to echo what Lawrence just said, and when we looked at this before, I questioned, the amount of money that we're talking about and the necessity of it. So I just encourage us to look for other ways to fund the construction of sidewalks. They are popular now. They're becoming more popular as time goes on, not only in our community, but in others. So I hope we can be creative about how we go about doing that.
And I would also like to just comment, in the sidewalk master plan, I appreciate the attention to also the history of how this is. And so it helps us show how we have some gaps because it was not popular to do sidewalks in some residences during a period of time. And so I appreciate that context being in there, and it shows us why we have those gaps, but why it's important for council to set these as priorities. Any other council comments? All right, we'll move on. Thank you, Tim. Sheila, will you please read public hearing 3922?
Public hearing 3922 is a proposed annexation of property located on the south side of Mexico Gravel Road and east of Wyatt Lane.
Do we have a staff report?
Oh, yes, you do. Once again, public hearing, but no action other than to open and close the public hearing. And this is annexation, so we can't pass an ordinance till 14 days after the hearing. And this is property that's a single future home site on the south side of Mexico Gravel Road at the T intersection of Spring Crest Drive, which is in a City of Columbia subdivision, and that's where this property joins the city limit. And you can see it's just shy of 10 acres. The zoning request is R1, so that's one family dwelling. The applicants and petitioners, the Giroux, John and Stacy Giroux, their plans are to build a single house at this time. And that's an oblique perspective aerial showing from kind of the southeast in the air along Mexico Gravel Road, Wyatt Lane coming up here. And so the city's on the west side, not quite contiguous, and then it is contiguous on the north side there. You can see kind of the land use pattern. It's kind of intermittent with city-style subdivisions and homes on large acreages, such as this one. Of course, our policy is if there's a sewer nearby, they have to connect to sewer rather than do an on-site waste disposal system, and that's the case here. So we're invoking the policy resolution. They came through the process. It is zoned for single family now. The county has very similar zoning district. They do intend to file a plat on this. The sewer is accessible on Mexico Gravel. And according to our policy resolution, they must annex to be able to connect to sewer. All the other utilities are the cities. You can also see we did although a very different shape, we did a large single-family lot over here in recent time, northeast of this site. This went through our Planning and Zoning Commission. On November 10, they voted 8-0, 1 absent to recommend approval of the R1, subject to annexation. And it also is the Commission's request that we hold this over onto old business. So you'll get a chance to talk about the ordinance when that comes up in 2 weeks. Try to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions of council, of staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Would anyone from the public wish to speak on public hearing 3922? Please come to the podium. Seeing none, I will close the public comment. Any questions that came to you in the last second? Okay, all right, so there's no vote on this, and I understand it will come up, I believe, at our next city council meeting. All right, thank you, Tim. All right, moving on, Sheila, will you please read Bill 33122?
Council Bill 33122 is an ordinance approving the final plat of Hinkson Apartments, Plat Number 1, accepting the dedication of rights-of-way and easements, authorizing a performance contract, and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective. Second reading.
So council discussed tabling this item to the December 19th, 2022 meeting at our prior November 21st meeting. So I would make a motion to table this to the December 19th meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Roy. All those in favor of tabling this item to the December 19th, 2022 meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Moving on, Sheila, will you please read B 33522?
Council Bill 33522 is an ordinance amending Chapter 22 of the City Code relating to the provision of refuse bags for residential refuse customers and fixing the time when this ordinance shall become effective. Second reading.
Do we have a staff report?
Yes, good evening. David Sorrell, Director of Utilities. With me is Steve Hunt. He's the Assistant Director of Utilities over solid waste. So if you recall, last month in November 7th, we brought a presentation at a work session that had some considerations, for council's consideration, some items possibly to revise with
better to do those, do this now and didn't do that later, or, kind of stumble through, even though people, it seems clearly do not like the logo bag system? Is it better to just stumble through for, another short period of time and then just kind of rip the Band-Aid off all at once?
Well, we could definitely do either one. My thoughts on it is that when we converted the logo bag system, we still had quite a few black bags for refuse that aren't logoed. And we have enough of those bags with the logo bags that we have currently that we could go ahead and do vouchers in January. So the customers would go ahead and get vouchers just like they have, and the bags would be available. We just wouldn't require the use of the logo bag, and we would provide vouchers until our inventory of bags was depleted. So if we ended up not doing another change, we could go right back to a logo bag program or not, and just go ahead and make another order in June and go on.
So you're saying you're going to still send out vouchers for black bags?
To deplete the remaining inventory we have.
And
that would be the idea.
How much inventory do you think you have? In terms of
I don't know off the top of my head. Do you know how many there are?
We have about 60,000 non-logo bags and 17,000 rolls of logo bags in stock.
So that's 60,000 rolls, you said?
Yes.
So how long would that typically?
Well, we give 2 rolls per customer, and so we got roughly 35,000 customers, so it would pretty much get us through one voucher cycle. And then if we decided not to move forward with any type of automated system and we wanted to keep the bag system and we wanted to provide the bags, we'd have opportunity to do that again in June. We'd just have to make a new order.
So one voucher cycle is 6 months or a year?
We do one in January and one in June. Is that
6 months? Yes.
Yeah.
So 6 months. And you would send those vouchers out. People could choose whether or not to redeem them. Could they, but they could only redeem them for the number of vouchers they had. You wouldn't be sending out additional vouchers if people requested them.
For the blue bags, we would send an additional voucher. For black bags, no, we would not. We would just send out the 2 vouchers, and the bags would be available while supplies last.
If they wanted to. If they didn't want to, they could just, if they had it in a kitchen bag, you could put the kitchen bag out. And as long as it's in a bag, you're going to pick it up.
In a bag less than 50 pounds.
Bag less than 50 pounds. Any limit on that number of bags?
No. That's not proposed at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Nick?
If we did decide to go back, if we stopped this and then we decided to do it again, how long would it take to turn around to get the bags from the supplier?
Hopefully we'd have a decision sometime early this spring, and we just need to make an order by May. Is that about a month's notice? We already have a contract, so we could go right back to it in June.
Okay. All right. Oh, one other thing. Did you have you gotten feedback from staff, particularly staff?
Yeah, when we had
our bags about this, because one of the concerns has been about there being so many bags out that we put them
when we had our presentation on the 7th, we had given that presentation to the staff previously, and they had 4 concerns at the time. One, they're concerned that if we change our system, we may eliminate the ad pays that the staff currently gets, which, we're doing a classification compensation study, so hopefully when that study's completed, that if we're able to implement it, that everybody will be getting market-based pay and we wouldn't need the ad pays. They said our hiring process is slow and difficult. They are concerned that customers may put out a lot more bags. I'm kind of the opinion that my household's not going to generate more garbage just because I can put out more bags. I'm typically putting out 1, sometimes 2 bags a week. I'm not going to end up generating any more than I am now, and I think most families would probably be that way. Yeah, I have the occasional instance where I do some cleanup or something, and I have an additional bag, but I don't think I'm going to go from 1 to 2 bags to 6 overnight. If that turns out to be a problem, we can look at ways to then possibly put a limit on the number of bags or something in the future, but I don't really anticipate it myself. And the other concern they had was that they're concerned that the automated collection may not be as efficient as the manual collection, but it's kind of an industry standard now, and I believe it'll be more efficient if we were to go that way.
have a concern about the number of bags that we set aside for folks who can't afford bags, because I was not anticipating the amount of calls and concerns that we got when the city implemented pay-as-you-throw for families that had, they were modest in their household income. They had more than 2 people in the house, so they generated more trash. And then also the seniors that called me and said that their medical devices are all individually packaged and they needed more trash bags in order to put their trash out. So I wonder if we can't include an expanded number of those bags set aside for low-income households, because even a roll of 5 given to a family in need doesn't even last them a month.
We'd have to double check to see what our current inventory on the 5-count rolls are, but we've discussed, staff has with Food Bank, and they're willing to distribute those to those in need on our behalf.
But that wouldn't even last them a month. If you gave them a 5-roll bag, that's a nice one-time, I don't have to spend $10, but for a family that has those continuing needs, what I'm suggesting is that we have a more generous plan to set aside more bags for families in need, so we don't create yet another round of the same concerns.
And,
Do I need to make a motion to amend that?
We could maybe
So I'm going to jump in
Go
and say, we can't just do that on the fly. That's going to take an entire program set up by city staff if we're going to provide a need-based program. So either utilizing a community partner that's already in existence is something that staff can explore, but setting up an entire needs-based program from top to bottom is not something that we can just do on the fly without having some sort of cost associated with that for the utility.
So, but we do have in our strategic plan, and I don't know where this effort is, to have a single eligibility determination. There's supposed to be a metric for that, and that would be for paratransit, for utility assistance, and we could include trash bag assistance. So I don't know that I'm suggesting you have to have a needs-based program. What I'm suggesting is that the number of bags you set aside for the food bank or any other organization, that a pantry that provides for families in need, be considerably larger than what you've discussed before.
Sure, and what you're asking for tonight is for staff to commit to that, and without being able to analyze it and put dollars to it, it's not something that city staff can commit to in the middle of a council meeting.
But we could ask for something to come back to us on what might a program, what
That is
that
correct.
look like.
So somebody that you're already partnering with, Love Columbia, could have, I'm sure they would appreciate being asked, because they may have some metrics that help you with that decision-making.
Sorry, there's a lot of questions going on at the same time. So I think looking at coming back with, maybe at the end, requesting for that to come back of what would that program similar, are you done with your questions, or were you commenting on that one? Okay,
I just wanted
Andrea.
to add on
Yeah.
to that. In the council memo, it says those 5-count rolls of bags for those in need until the inventory is depleted. So that has that caveat on there. So when we're bringing something back, if we could talk about a sustainability approach to that, how we could keep that going versus just until our inventory is gone, might be helpful.
For that clarification.
Thank you, Andrea.
Yeah, so one of my questions was, because I do hair and I do some of the employees here, and I get to talk to them about the trash bags. And from my understanding, they had requested a 5-bag limit. And so by taking away the 2-bag, which it has no limit, because as long as you have bags, you can put them out. One of their concerns was the multiple trips that they have to take back to the landfill. So if we do away with the bags or the logo bags, how are we going to ensure that the routes stay short and they're not making multiple trips to the landfill?
Well, and I just say it's my opinion. I don't think that we're going to see that be a huge problem. If we're concerned about that, we could always amend what's on the ordinance right now to include a limit on the total number of bags placed at the curb.
Okay, also in your explaining of the automated system that's moving forward, is that already decided, or is that like So it's not decided? Because
No, sir,
me
we're-
listening to you, the way you explained it, you just explained the automated system coming forward and the 3 different barrel sizes.
So we're working on finalizing the specs for the vehicles and the carts. And then we're going to develop a program. We know we've interviewed at least one consultant to help us moderate some input gathering sessions from the community to see what does the community want. Are they gonna want like one size cart? Are they gonna want 2 or 3 option of sizes and different prices to where it'd be more of a true pay-as-you-throw system? And so that's being developed. We're still researching what other communities do. And so we're hoping that we can get a proposal that we can present to the community sometime in the next month or so, and then have those meetings about the same time we try to make a recommendation on a bid award and all that, to bring all of that back to council at one time with a recommended program and maybe some alternates.
Okay. Is a hybrid situation an option, or are we just going straight to one or straight to the other?
I don't believe a hybrid situation is really an option. One of the goals, I think, in going to an automated system is to make the workplace as safe as possible and to make the working conditions more attractive to where we could be more successful in retaining and recruiting employees. A hybrid system sounds real simple, but you're still going to end up having somebody hanging on the back of that truck all day long. And, 2, 3 houses, 5 houses may have carts, and then you may have a couple with bags, or you may have 20 with bags. So you're not helping to minimize the potential for injury from people riding on the back of the truck. And so I would think we would want to go one or the other.
Okay. And my understanding, in the tighter situations where the neighborhood have close together homes, wouldn't it still be somebody riding on the back of the truck who would have to jump off, pull the cart out for the automated arm to catch, and then put it back?
That we're still going to find out as time goes on. Part of the program we presented on the 7th was to have some smaller, more mobile, maneuverable vehicles, and those may go out in 2-person crews, and people may have to move some carts, but I would hope they wouldn't have to ride the whole route on the back of the truck.
Okay.
So just a quick, before I open this up for public comment, when we made the switch 2 years ago, two years ago, did we see a decline in the amount of trash?
Okay,
that
so
went
I asked
residential
Mr.
trash?
Hunt to look up some information this afternoon, and I can go back and get the previous stuff that was kind of month to month and this and that, which it looked like there was a better decline on that than there is now, but he can summarize what he's found.
Okay, so comparing this information from this year versus 2019, which is pre-COVID and pre-implementing the logo bag program, we've seen a 14% decrease in the tonnage that's collected at the curb. That's trash collected at the curb. In that same time period, overall citywide, we've actually seen a 5% decrease in the amount of recycling. That's residential and commercial. So with that in mind, on the residential recycling, from this year to 19, we've seen a 5% increase in recycling tonnage that's collected at the curb. In addition, we've seen a 51% increase in our drop-off sites. Even though we've reduced the number of drop-off sites, the ones we still have are used very heavily. In addition, I believe most of the tonnage reduction that we've seen is due to the bulky item collection program. The reason I think that is my office at a landfill, I look directly out of my window to the small vehicle drop-off site, and that facility is a constant traffic of pickup trucks, SUVs, and cars pulling trailers with furniture and trash. To back that up, in 2019, we had, for the entire year, we had right at 5,000 customers that paid cash that had the minimum fee. So they're basically bringing out one item, a couch or something small. This year, we've already had 10,000 customers that are cash only with the minimum fee. So that is, I believe, is our reduction in tonnage at the curb, is we're no longer collecting those mattresses, couches, stuff that won't fit in the bag.
Thank you, Steve.
Welcome.
Did you have a question?
Do you measure the total tonnage just going into landfill period regardless of source?
We do. So in that same time period, from 2019 to this year, we've seen an increase in tonnage of almost 14,000 tons. So we've seen a 9% increase in tonnage, and we've seen a 35% increase in customers at the landfill.
And then a clarification. So your memo talks about, going back to the rolls of bags, your memo talks about 5-count rolls of bags, and that's what some of the questions were about. When I was talking about vouchers, I was thinking of the large rolls, the 26 bags, I think. So are we talking about 26-bag rolls or 5-bag rolls?
Both. So we would continue to provide the vouchers for the 26-count or 25-count because the previous non-logoed bags were 25-count rolls to all our customers that could get curbside collections.
Okay.
Those that couldn't afford to buy additional bags or I say additional bags, couldn't afford to buy bags if they run out. Those were what the 5-count rolls that we were talking about possibly having the food bank distribute. Because we have an inventory of both.
Okay. But if you had some of the excess of the 26-bag rolls,
we could easily look at providing those for people in need as well, assuming that we could get a program that Nancy discussed to put in place.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions before we open this up for the public comment? Okay, and I will remind those who are going to come up when I open this up for public comment, I will remind those that we are talking about removing the requirement of using a city-provide refuse bag for residential trash collection. That is the legislation that's being discussed tonight. The legislation is, we are not voting on automated collection or the trucks or any of those other things that are part of the conversation. All right, would anyone from the public wish to speak on trash?
Are you talking about trash bags?
Yes, please come up to the microphone, Bill.
I live at 705 Cook, easily, and nobody has got hurt on a truck back home. That's the silliest damn thing. You gotta be going fast, and you can't go fast, slow. But I mean, we need trash bags. Low income does. Let the people over $50,000 go buy their bags. But low income does need. Why don't you go back deliver the bags by truck like you used to? Because this company you get the voucher from, they getting their chunk of money. They getting a damn big chunk of money. I don't know how much, but you ought to deliver them by truck like you used to. And nobody has ever got hurt by a truck. I worked on a truck, garbage, when I was in school. Nobody ever got hurt. I worked on a truck about 20 some odd, maybe more, part-time, hauling hay. And you put that truck in Grandma, and nobody ever got hurt. I've hauled more hay, and I was in my 50s when I stopped working part-time. And if a 50-year-old man can do it, a young. And I mean, we need our trash bags, low income. If not, rich people over $50,000, go buy their bags. They got them in stores. But leave our alone. And I know people in wheelchairs. You can pick a little bag up and take it to the curb. Now forget about these damn roll carts. If they want a roll cart, let them go to Ace Hardware or Lowe's or Home Depot. And I mean, it makes me mad when stupid people, we got to have roll carts.
Bill, we're talking about bags.
But you think about the expense, and you hurting the salary people. I was down at Boone County. They can't find workers. And another thing, you got the people riled out by these homeless people. I'll tell you how to cure that.
Bill, let's
Wait,
focus on bags.
About 1 minute. You tell these homeless people,
Thank
if
you,
they
Bill.
want a job, stay. If they don't want a job, put them on a damn bus or train, and if they come back, tell them if they come back, you're going to send them penitentiary.
Thank you, Bill.
And they'll go to work or they'll hit the road.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Would anyone else like to come and talk on the public comment about trash, the requirement of city logo trash bags?
Tough act to follow. I'm Rick Shanker. I live at 1829 Cliff Drive. I would like to make a comment before I make my few comments that when people bring trucks to the dump, that's added income that we don't get. So that is added income. I don't know if you want to address that or not, but that is added income. I attended both bag meetings. The meetings were confined for the most part to bag or not to bag. Mr. Sorrell did a great job of keeping it on track. I also attended the work session a couple years ago where the Public Works with words and pictures described the problems with the old bags. During the Q&A of the bag meeting, it was revealed that there have been complaints about the bags, the cost of bags, and the quality of bags. Here's the old bags, here's the new bags. Quite frankly, I don't see the difference. You all received a copy of a letter from Waste Zero about the bag, so you can read it. I'm bringing these in for you guys to look at. On the bright side of things, the logo bags have resulted in less trash going through the landfill and increased recycling. Now, if they come in trucks, like I said, there's more income for the city for that. Both of the less trash and increased recycling were goals of the council. The logo bag system was initiated to help resolve some of the problems revealed at the work session a couple of years ago, and it has succeeded. Staff revealed that we only have one source of bags right now through the RFP issued, and they explained why a bag that cost us 35 cents costs you, the public, over $2. So those folks that are paying the $2 extra, there's a discrepancy in our minds why if it cost 35, why it was $2 to buy them. But Mr. Sorrell explained that, why there was a discrepancy. Some people asked about if we're saving $1 million, and I'm paraphrasing this, we're currently paying for the bags on our monthly rates. So someone said, why don't we get a reduction in our costs if we eliminate the bags? So it's not truly a saving. It's taxpayers not getting what they're paying for. There was also questions about research done by staff for other municipalities that are using bags. Staff indicated there was no research done for other cities. The pros and cons of the bags environmentally, the union representatives on a voice vote did not express a preference for bags or not bags. And since job safety is so important, and there are an increase in automated system,
you're at time.
It's still one of the 10 most dangerous jobs.
Thank you, Rick. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on the proposed legislation?
Eugene Elkin, 3406 Range Line. As the gentleman's telling you, and as Mr. Sorrells clearly presented, he's had troubles with the logo bags. Well, we all know we had quality in this city, and the second meeting was the one I attended, and the ladies kept saying repeatedly, they can see through the bag. Well, if any one of you decide, you can see through the bag, and it does bust, and the tie does bust. So we asked Mr. Hunt about it, and Mr. Hunt swears the seller is providing the same quality. And I'm sorry I made a comment, but I said, sir, get a flight. Go check out the manufacturer. There is no sense in arguing with Columbia's women and any of us others who are trying to get their trash to the curb and the darn thing falls apart. We didn't say get rid of the bags. We're saying let's bring back that quality. Tonight's discussion, why not go forward, say a year from now, put what you're doing in place, so that we can get our quality back to Columbia, make it a good town, and trash refuge is not something on the first thing mentioned in the news every single night. Maybe one year we'll have plain black bags, no labels. Refuge costs should be lowered at this moment. If we're going to go to the system, no more of this, we should lower our monthly cost. There's nothing wrong with lowering cost. And the money made up is the person's taking their heavier stuff to the landfill. Nobody's discussing dollars that represents, because they're telling you stories, but they're not finishing the details. They did emphasize that they have not gone and looked at other bids. They have only stuck with this one company. We now have the poor quality, the see-through bag, and very thin. This is called very thin MIL. And for those who've never had a chance to be around plastic, why did we brag this was quality? This is of a heavier MIL. It could be that we need 4 MIL or greater. Please, please get that answer, just that one answer, and solve what Mr. Hunt's been pinned down to. He doesn't know anything about this. He's in his office thinking everything's running smooth. And Mr. Sarles, are you this boss? Mr. Sarles can only do his job and hope that Mr. Hunt is coming through.
Thank you, Eugene.
If you're the public, please listen.
Thank you, Eugene. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on the legislation tonight?
I'm short. Chris Jones, Ward 2. Mr. Hunt said something contradictory than what some other people had said. He said that the trash had actually increased by 14%, which I actually do believe, as opposed to the actual refuse collection at the curbs being lowered by a certain percentage, 15% one year, 5% another year. I would be willing to bet it's for a completely different reason, that I do live in an apartment complex with a dumpster, and tonight before coming to council, I looked out the dumpster, and my dumpster is overflowing by approximately 18 inches. My dumpster, I live in a 16-plex. I have a normal-sized dumpster, and my dumpster should not be overflowing. There's only 32 bedrooms in the 16-plex. Not all of them are done. There's people like me who I'm the only person. There might be 25 people that live in the whole complex. We should not be overflowing, but yet there's car after car every single day that are coming in because they can't afford the trash bags, and so they're dumping it off. There are so many reasons why you see on social media people posting, where can I find a dumpster, because I don't have the money. So while there are smaller amounts being picked up at the curb, again, according to Mr. Hunt, it's not smaller amounts that are being taken to the dump overall. Thank you.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on the legislation?
Hola, I'm Danny Perez. A few things to think about when you're voting tonight. It is no secret or surprise or shock that the ones who produce the most amount of trash are the ones that have the least amount of equity. Trash in itself is a multi-layered issue, and it's not just residential. It's also traffic-induced. More often than not, neighborhoods populated with people with less equity have the highest traffic flow, which produces its own trash, meaning these neighborhoods not only deal with their trash, but other trash. Something to think about. There's been a lot of talk about not having access to bags, so what do these people do with their trash? Because we're seeing less trash on the curbs. Well, they either try to stretch their bags out, which is what I do, and not have our bags out every week, but maybe every other week or a month. Or we hoard trash, which is a health concern because even though it's unpleasant, it also attracts pests. Some people burn their trash, a contamination and safety hazard issue. And some people, as we heard previously, take their trash elsewhere. And if they can't find a place, they take it out of city limits in a river or some abandoned place. My spidey senses tingle whenever I saw some of those numbers, whenever they said that the trash went down on the curb. How, in such a short amount of time, did all this trash diminish when we have neighborhoods with less equity? Where did that trash go? It went underground because they have to. People have to do things to survive, or they just deal with the trash as best they can. I know we're not talking about roll carts today, but I do think that bag or no bag, the people that are suffering the most aren't in this room tonight. They're the people that produce the most amount of trash. And I think that maybe we should go to the throat of the problem and have a roll cart system at our most vulnerable neighborhoods and try that out and then expand out. That is my proposal, because it shouldn't be the burden of our inequitable to take care of somebody else's trash and also living with that trash or having to risk the consequences of illegal actions to take that trash elsewhere because they can't afford it due to inequity. Thank you.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak on the legislation tonight?
Good evening. Rachel Prophet, 408 Bouquet Court. So I'm now in Andrea's ward. I want to start by commending city staff for holding the listening sessions. I think they were really informative. I love seeing all the comments and the charts that were made, given that this is such a hot topic. I really do appreciate the chance for people to give their input. I'm going to echo a lot of the comments that have come before, right? These are kind of poorly made. We hear stories of them ripping the bag, the ties come out, and when my husband takes the trash to the curb, I don't, that's his job. He's like tying it and then redouble knotting it, and then half the time it comes undone. We see bags getting ripped open. I live somewhere where we're next to woods, and, we see raccoons, crows, what have you, getting into the bags right when they go out to the curb. And obviously, it's disliked by a majority of citizens. And I agree, most of the decrease in waste that we're seeing is illegal dumping. I've had businesses contact me knowing that I'm kind of spearheading the roll cart effort, saying I want in on collecting signatures for the petition that we had because I'm paying double the amount to have my dumpster emptied. So that's where it's going. There were several news stories that came out in the last couple of months on contamination in recycling because people said, well, I don't have room in my trash bag, I'm going to toss it in that blue bag. And there it went to the recycling plant. And so I would encourage you all to vote yes in removing the need for the logo bags. And I'm really glad to hear that we have more of these decent bags hanging out. So maybe we can sort of cobble our way to the automated waste collection system. And I'm really excited to see this is moving forward. I encourage you all to support city staff as needed in moving that forward. I'm happy to help in any way, knowing that we've gotten to the point where we can actually talk about this. And I really do encourage you, as we move this forward, in addition to hitting up and putting this in areas where there is that inequity that we see, also talking with the other commissions that we see, the Disability Commission, the pedestrian, people that have an input where this will be impacted on their day-to-day lives, that sidewalk access in the snow. What does it look like for when we have the snow trucks out and, trash or the carts on the sidewalk? So really taking everything into effect and thinking about this system that lives within the other larger systems itself. It's not just trash. It's trash within our whole world in the city. So thank you all.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to speak on the legislation tonight?
My name's Mark Hyam. I'm here speaking on behalf of Mid-Missouri Peace Works.
Are you requesting the 5 minutes? Or are you
Yes,
gonna...
please.
Okay.
I don't know that I'll take that long, but okay. I would. Okay. Thank you. I live at 1402 Richardson Street. I've been a resident of Columbia for 51 years now, and I've seen this trash situation over and over again. About 30 years ago, we adopted a pay-as-you-throw program before it even went into effect. We had citizens petitioning to repeal it, and the council backed out of it, and we didn't get it. And I'm asking you tonight to please consider not making a switch now, only in hopes of making a switch a few months down the pike. I think it makes more sense to come up with a plan that really meets the city's needs. And that plan ought to be one that we implement basically from the grassroots. We need to get neighborhood associations, we need to get community organizations involved in promoting and educating. I've seen so much. I live in Benton Stevens neighborhood, and I've seen so much mispackaged waste on the curbs, stuff going out in blue bags that doesn't belong in blue bags, things like that. And that's really something that I think is indicative of the fact these people don't get it, because they're not putting out like 3 bags of trash plus stuff in blue bags. They're just messed up. And I think there's been a poor education effort, or a lack of an education effort. So whatever we're going to go to, and Peaceworks strongly supports a pay-as-you-throw system of some sort that creates strong incentives to recycle and to compost and to overall minimize waste, to buy less things that have packaging. That sort of grassroots effort to become a model community that really embraces a green approach to dealing with our solid waste, it's really in all of our interest to do that. I know, and I think you all know, that Columbia's diversion rate is only about half of the national average. I believe last I saw it was like 17% diversion rate compared to a 35% national average. And it really should be something that we do much better at than we're doing right now. I'm not criticizing anyone. I appreciate it's not an easy job dealing with trash, but if we can get people on board on something that works for everyone. If we go to roll carts, great. Have 3 sizes and have strong price differential between the smalls and the bigs, so you encourage, and this is working out for the workers, it's working out for the people of the community. You know, I live by myself. I'm a single person, and, you know, people who live by themselves are paying as much as people who have a big family right now, you know, and that really isn't very fair. Somebody puts out 1 bag a week, is paying twice as much for that bag effectively as somebody who puts out 2 bags a week, and somebody who puts out 1 bag every 2 weeks is paying 4 times as much, and that's really not fair. And the notion that being poor means you generate more waste, I think that's bogus. I don't think that that's legit, and I don't think there's any studies that document that poor people, I think rich people, create a lot of trash as well. And basically all I'm asking of you tonight is, let's give this some time to figure out what we're doing with our solid waste problem, and then make changes and get a buy-in from as many segments of the community as possible, from the organizations that are working for the environment to Chamber of Commerce to across the board. If we can do that, then when we implement a new system, whether it's using logo bags and continuing that, but with some modifications, whether it's roll carts, whether it's going to just bags, we should have a buy-in. And at this point, I don't think the community's engaged in the issue, and I think that that's a problem too. I really do appreciate it, and hope you'll consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else would anyone else from the public wish to speak on the legislation being discussed? Okay, we'll go to council comments or questions. One thing I just wanted to note, Dave, you brought up some information here at the presentation that was not in the memo, and the rates for recycling as well as the planned timeline. And I would just encourage going forward to include that with the memo at the same time, because a lot of the questions that I know I received, you answered there. So I think just being maybe more information to be given out is always appreciated for that piece. That was just one of my comments that stood out to me. Council questions, council comments. Nick, anything? You don't have to.
No, I don't think so. It's okay.
Yeah, Matt.
I'll just make a couple comments. So, I mean, I agree on the point about more information. I mean, I think a lot of the feedback that we received since this went out was about, whether this was a complete, we're all going to have roll carts tomorrow or what the situation was. So having that timeline and continuing to get that information out there, is important. But I think it's also important, for us to be responsive to the program that we put in place that clearly, isn't working. It doesn't really seem to be working for anybody for a variety of different reasons. And so I've kind of wrestled with the question that I initially proposed or asked is, do you do everything at once, or do you make this incremental change now and then make another change 6 months from now? And I think it's important to show that we are starting to take action and starting to take steps toward a more comprehensive solution. So I think that, while this is not ideal, questions about how many bags you can put out and, things like that, it is a good step forward and it is an improvement over what we're doing right now. So I look forward to, the continued work that you guys are doing, the outreach, the engagement that you're working on, and all the bids and proposals and plans and all of those things. I look forward to reviewing those in the spring, and I look forward to, hopefully council approving this action tonight to move away from the logoed bags as soon as possible.
So one other comment that I was just reminded, based on something that you said, you guys, in addition to the timeline, or in addition to the rates discussion, the timeline that you have, I think, listening to what Matt is saying and hearing what we're hearing, is having that sort of, we expect something within the next 3 months, and you're starting the public process of engagement for asking, what does the system look like as we're doing the change? So we had a lot of people comment about, we went to pay-as-you-throw a few years ago, and our theoretical I call it quasi pay-as-you-throw. And the idea is that then if we do another change to the system, there's that concern if it's too far of a change, that people will get into different habits when you theoretically have been trying to encourage them to think about conservation behaviors and recycling. So I would encourage and really put the support behind, come back to us sooner than later before we start thinking about something else. If that makes sense. Comments? Any other comments?
Mayor, do I need to make any additional comments about setting aside a more significant number of bags?
I think the question was whether, because that would be more of a plan, like a program or plan to come back to us. Nancy, what did you recommend for, because that was something to come back to us.
That would have to be something that comes back at a later date, but that's not part of this particular legislation.
So we could do that at the end, come up with that. Okay, and I'll make a note to remind.
Except that we were going to accept those vouchers and deplete the existing inventory of bags, and we need to hold on to some of those bags in order to provide for our low-income families.
That is not part of the ordinance. That was staff's plan on how to handle it, so that's not included in the ordinance. The ordinance itself does away with the logo bags and the city-provided bags. That's what the ordinance provides, is to delete that out of the city code. So what you're requesting would be an additional request that you can talk about under council comments at the end of the meeting.
Well, shouldn't I just amend the ordinance to reserve a certain amount of because otherwise there's nothing to stop us from depleting that supply, and then we've left our families in that same quantity.
So there's no part of the ordinance currently where we would add that piece, if you look at it, for what is on their legislation today, and I wouldn't know the number to say.
It's a city code. This is a city code provision relating to our ongoing trash programming as it relates to provision of the black bags and the logo bags, the requirement to use logo bags by residential customers for trash pickup. What you're talking about is a completely separate, different program that would need additional study and a plan to come back with, not something that can be amended tonight on this ordinance.
I think the confusion is because it's listed about us talking about depleting the bags. So I guess I would just say, don't deplete them yet until we have a program. You come back with the potential ideas.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mayor.
Even if we were to issue vouchers for the number of customers we have and everybody redeemed them, we would still have 5,000 to 7,000 rolls left over.
Yeah, so
So
let's,
we'll have plenty of bags after the first voucher if that's what we choose to do.
other council comments before we move on? I think one comment I did want to have was about, as we're developing this plan, regardless of what we do, the discussion about illegal dumping or dumping and use, I think that's not related to this legislation, but there's something that has come up a lot. And so I think we need to be thinking about going forward with how do we enforce that issue. Were you going to say something to Carlin?
I was going to say that one of the things we did do, we actually employ an inspector to deal with the illegal dumping. So we do have someone assigned to that process.
All right, thank you. All right, question, yes.
Can you summarize exactly where we are for everybody about what we're voting on? You said send the vouchers out if we decide to do that. So I just want to be clear on what we're voting on and what we're doing with the vouchers.
The vouchers are not part of this particular legislation. All you're doing is amending the city code to remove the requirement to provide vouchers going forward to all residential customers. And you're also removing the requirement to use logo bags for residential trash pickup. So that you can use any bag now. If this amendment passes, or this ordinance passes, residents would be able to use any bag at the curb, including, your white, you would no longer have to put your white household trash bag into a black logoed bag in order to have
Effective
it picked up.
immediately?
Correct.
And
January.
Oh, January. Is the effective date January, or is
Our intention was to have the effective date January. I don't know what the ordinance actually says.
The ordinance does not have, it says now.
That's what I thought.
That's what I thought. I thought it was immediate, but
Well,
as far as,
Well,
I think we're conflating a bunch of things because the January is faster.
So the clarification, the legislation we have before tonight is about removing the requirement of doing city logoed bags at the curb. The clarifying piece is that we don't normally in ordinance form have how you implement the different pieces. I don't know that there is an ordinance about the voucher program. So I would ask for staff to just send the summarization of what's going to go for the vouchers, emailing that to us so that we can explain that
Yes,
to our
that's what I'm
constituents
asking for.
when they ask those questions.
we can do that.
Yes, Nick Foster.
But I do want to be sure about implementation because I think we did talk about January, this being effective in January, but it sounds like we're talking about if we go ahead and rescind it, it would be effective immediately, right?
correct.
And is solid waste prepared for that change immediately?
Yes, it will not have negative impact on our ability.
So my trash day is tomorrow.
So if this was approved today, you could put white kitchen garbage bags out in the morning.
Okay.
All right, any other council comments? All right, Sheila, will you please call the roll on B 33522?
Council Bill 33522, Ms. Fowler,
Yes.
Ms. Weiner,
Yes.
Mr. Lovelady,
Yes.
Mr. Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Pitzer,
Yes.
Ms. Buffalo.
Yes. All right, so we've eliminated the requirement of city logoed bags at the curb. Thank you.
Immediately.
Immediately. Okay. No, we're not clapping, y'all. No. All right, Sheila, will you please read the items on the consent agenda twice and call the roll?
Items on the consent agenda include bills 32722, 32822, 32922, 33022, 33222, 33322, 33422, 33622, 33722, 33822, and Resolution 19222. Bills 32722, 32822, 32922, 33022, 33222, 33322, 33422, 33622, 33722, 33822, and Resolution 19222. Ms. Fowler?
Yes.
Ms. Weiner?
Yes.
Mr. Lovelady?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Pitzer?
Yes.
Ms. Buffalo?
Yes. All right, moving on. We have nothing on our new business this evening. So moving on to intro and first reading. Sheila, will you please read the items under intro and first reading?
All bills are introduced by the mayor unless otherwise indicated. Bills 33922, 34022, 34122, 34222, 34322, 34422, 34522, 34622, 34722, 34822, 34922, 35022, and 35122. First reading.
Thank you. All right, now we're on to our report section. So first up on our reports is report 9922. This is something that I know that we do every year to get ready, and today's weather does not make me really think about this, but it is about our weather response plan for the upcoming winter season. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Shane Creech, Director of Public Works. This is our annual winter weather response report. Similar to last year, due to overall staffing concerns within Public Works and the other divisions and departments that assist with winter weather response, staff recommends no changes be made to the current first, second, and third priority routes. As part of the budget process, Council approved creating a laborer position, which allowed us to underfill 5 of our open CDL driver positions. That has helped us reach a total of 6 vacancies within the street division, which is 2 fewer than this time last year. Last year, Public Works added a new fleet option with 3 Class 5 trucks. Class 5 trucks are smaller than single-axle dump trucks, but heavier duty than a 1-ton truck, and they don't require a commercial driver's license. That experiment was successful, and we plan to add 2 additional Class 5 trucks, which are scheduled to arrive by the middle of 2023. When fully staffed, crews typically range from 22 to 28 employees that report for 12-hour shifts. Public Works also has access to additional resources from other departments and contractors during larger storms. The city currently maintains 1,430 lane miles, with a little less than half considered priority lane miles. Richard Stone, the Engineering Operations Manager for Public Works, is with me tonight, and we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for staff about the winter weather response plans? Seeing none, thank you so much. Appreciate the information.
Thank you.
All right, we're now on to the general comments of the public, council, and staff. Would anyone from the public wish to speak? I don't get it, but.
Chris Jones, Ward 2. To make it short, I was recently on a social media looking at different things, and somebody had posted a video of a local talk radio station from the day before. One of the council members was on a very conservative talk radio station, and the host and the co-host doxed 2 of our council members, Pat Fowler and Nancy Weiner. They gave, the radio hosts gave the phone numbers, said some very disparaging things towards both council members. It was in regards to the FUSIS. Said some very disparaging things that doesn't even regarding FUSIS. They then went on to be very hateful. Now, at that point in time, the other council member at no point in time interrupted them. No point in time did they say anything. At the very end, they said, well, one of them's okay. But I would hope that in the future, because this is also a radio station that our police chief goes on very frequently, I would hope that that council person would think about what it looks like to the rest of the city and stop them immediately or immediately leave the conversation. This same radio station earlier this year had said some very homophobic and transphobic remarks. The homophobic comments were directed directly at another council member. And I would like for anybody who knows what radio station I'm talking about to please think before you do that again. Thank you.
Would anyone else from the public wish to speak?
Barbara Jefferson, Ward 3.
Ward 1. We're listening.
So,
Testing us.
I'd just like to know where we're at with this diverse equity inclusion staff member. It seems like I've heard that we might be putting things on hold, and I'm trying to figure, well, how long will they be on hold? What are we waiting to change so that they're no longer on hold? If the consultant that we were working with, are we working with the consultant? Then where's the feedback? Do we need to get a new consultant? I'd just like to hear something about that real soon. I also think about this thing about the communication, public engagement type consultant. I think there at one time there was talk about that. I'd like to know where that's at. I've listened tonight about all this stuff, about statements about how we're going to get the community involved and get feedback about where we're going to go with trash and other things. And I'm thinking, yeah, right, how are you going to do that? Are you going to tell people to go to Be Heard? You know how well that works. So we need some help. I don't know what the holdup is. That's it.
Thank you, Barbara. Would anyone else from the public wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'll go to council comments. Order of voting. Pat, I'll start with you.
Thank you. So I was over by the Wabash bus station looking at the dumpster enclosure where it's not a compactor, it's a dumpster. And I have some pictures I'll send to Mr. Seawood. And one of the, I know that it's been out to bid and I'm hoping that there's been a response, but in the meantime, one of the reasons why that location is so awkward, it's because there's a way to go down the Wabash Alley and a way to come out of the bus station, and then you're faced with an obstructed view because of the fence. And when the gate was there, of course, then there was a problem because the gate would swing open and the truck had to back in, and there's a dance school there with small children. And as awful as this dumpster looks like right now, and it's I don't know how to talk about the capacity, but it is over capacity right now. I would like to ask the city staff to go ahead and remove the rest of that fence so that we, to the extent that we can improve the sight lines and protect particularly our little ones when they're coming out of the dance studio, until such time as we're ready to start the construction of the compactor shelter at the other end of Wabash.
So are you asking for council approval for that request?
And discussion about, and to hear from city staff about it. I have, here, you can look at, I wish I had a way to throw this picture up. Yeah, but mostly, I mean, the fence looks horrible that it's knocked down, but you know what? It's improved the sight lines, and it's less dangerous to come out of that Wabash or to go down the other way and avoid clipping a person.
So I think the request is for something to come back.
Yeah, we can look at it and bring something back so the council as a discussion item.
Do we know if we have a successful bidder on the enclosure? We don't.
We do not. The amount that came back was $175,000, I believe. And so what I asked them to do is let's break it down into projects. And so one project would be the electric work, one project would be the enclosure, one project would, so instead of trying to do it all with one consultant, one contractor, some of the work we may be able to do in-house. And so we just need to figure out a way to bring down that cost.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to hearing about it. That's it.
Okay. Andrea? Roy?
Okay.
Yeah.
With the consensus of council, I would like to have the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission review Ballinger Lane for the consideration in the sidewalk master plan.
I would support that. Same. Anyone have any objections to, he's basically asking the bicycle, this is the request, they said the recommendations for how to do it?
I just have a question about the process, and I'm supportive, of course. I loved your question, Roy. I thought it was really great. So, but is this the way that this is normally done? That is, that additions, I know that the Sidewalk and Pedestrian Commission was involved, but are the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission was involved? Is that the way these normally go on to the plan, or are there other means by which that happens?
So it can come from either from the commission, from staff, from the plan commission, or from city council. The idea is that we route it through the bike pedestrian commission to actually review it, and they make the final recommendation.
Okay. We can make the request, but it would eventually go through Bicycle and Pedestrian.
Right, so they would,
That's what
they would actually do the
what you're
review
saying. Yeah,
and then bring
okay.
the recommendation forward.
Okay.
Yeah, for the process, yeah. All right. Any objections to that? Okay. Yeah, that's supported. Thank you. Any other things?
No.
I'll go to you. I'll come back to me.
Just want to mention a couple of things. One, several of us were able to go out and tour the Rocheport Bridge construction site, and really appreciated the opportunity to do that, and it was cold. It was cold, but I was going to say it's pretty cool, so I guess it was just cold. But one of these days I'm going to look forward to crossing that bridge and realizing I used to, there was a time when I stood right there. So it was just very impressive. And then on Friday night I did a ride along, and I want to thank Chief Jones for the opportunity to do that. It was really eye-opening for me, and I came to a new appreciation for what our police force is doing, especially as they are they're understaffed. But I also got to go to the Joint Communications building and see the work that was done there and talk to some of the folks there. And again, a new appreciation for that. So to my fellow council people, if you haven't had an opportunity to do that, I highly recommend it. It's an exceptional experience.
Thank you, Nick. Matt, anything? All right, so I just have a couple of things. One, at our last meeting, we held off on making appointments to the Commission on Cultural Affairs because they had a lack of applicants, and we talked about changing the ordinance to not require the specific ward location. It was brought up that there's a few qualifiers on those designated positions, like must be part of a business, must be part of an educational, and so would we want to make all the changes at the same time? That makes me just kind of want to question, and it would be my encouragement that we might send this to the commission and ask for them to make, because originally they had made the original recommendation of removing the ward requirements, but had not discussed about the other modifiers, but they might not have known to ask about it. So is there consensus from council to send the request back to the Commission on Cultural Affairs to review their, the legislation that requires like how their membership is made up? Is there any questions or concerns about that? Okay, all right, so, yes.
And in the meantime, we can go ahead and send that ward amendment back to you to get those appointments if you want, or do you want us to wait and hold on?
I think it depends on, I know that they're not meeting in December, and I guess it's just whether or not, I can't remember if they're one of the ones that those who serve continue to serve, but I don't think so.
Not have that language.
Right, so do they still have a quorum if we wait for them to review?
They're down 3 people.
And what is their number?
9?
No, 12.
Okay, so
12.
those still have a quorum, so, and I'm fine with them reviewing it before it comes back to us. That way we have it as one review. Does that sound good? Not two?
And it would be our intention too to add that language in that, kind of in that draft, was to add that language of members serve until duly appointed and qualified. So.
Okay. Sheila, does this affect then whether or not we make appointments at the next meeting, or?
I guess it depends on, still, we haven't gotten any new applicants, so.
Okay.
at this point, you still have the same applicants you had last time.
That are not in the wards currently in the membership.
Correct. So technically, you could have appointed 2 of the 3.
Okay.
At that time, you can still do that. I think you didn't want to pick and choose, so
Yeah.
you guys, that's my assumption. So you guys waited. So, I mean, if other people apply, the deadline's not till Friday, and you get somebody in Ward 1, 2, or 3 that you think is qualified, you could go ahead and do all 3.
So we're encouraging people to serve on boards and commissions. Applications are due Friday at 5, and the Commission on Cultural Affairs is accepting applications. All right, thank you. So the second one I have is that there was mention earlier today about livable streets. And I know for the past year, Local Motion has been working with community members to help envision what complete streets look like. Concurrently, I've learned that city staff has applied for a grant to help review complete streets, like our complete streets policy. I also understand that staff and Local Motion are going to get together after the first of the new year. So I was going to ask for council, kind of direction on this. I think I would like to ask staff to come back to us. I know that a grant won't be awarded until after the, what I mean, like a February, March timeline. But I think it might be a good idea for us to have staff to come back to us on what could the plan look like to review our streets, complete streets policy in coordination with public engagement and with groups like Local Motion. Does that have support to ask something to come back to us in about 6 months for that?
Absolutely. Local Motion's doing a fantastic job, I think, in public engagement. I think not only would we benefit from that conversation between staff and them, but also we could benefit from, reviewing what they're doing in that way and see how it would impact what we do more generally.
Yeah.
Ask for that within 3
yes.
months. 6 months seems like an awfully long time.
Well, I knew that I asked about the timing of that grant, and from the federal grant, and they won't know about it until, I think they said March. And so my thought was find out if they have, because that will help know where's potential extra funding for how broad or what they could do. So I was going to give 6 months just to be, but obviously as soon as you can, but that conversation to come back. Yeah. Great, thank you. And then my third one is that, and final, I promise. As y'all know, the city clerk's office is behind in meeting minutes, and the city clerk has provided council with examples of meeting minutes that she would like city council to consider as the official minutes. But she'll obviously need our guidance to move forward. And so I was going to ask, with your support, to ask Sheila to come back with a report on our next meeting and include those examples of minutes so that we can provide that guidance for moving forward. Is there any objection or concern for that? So that's good? Okay, thank you, Sheila. All right, good. All right, now we're on to staff comments. And DeCarlin, I will prompt you with one. Somebody mentioned the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer, and you made note to it. So just wondering what the status is on that, and yeah.
And so we're in the process right now of actually getting back together to actually move forward with the recruitment of that position. And so what we had was we actually hired a consultant to help us with that process. At that time when we hired the consultant, we were down several staff, and now that our staff's back up, we have a HR director and a deputy HR director. I believe we can do this search in-house, but we need to look what that looks like in order to start the process. There are a number of things that the consultant said that we need to work on. We actually assigned a staff member to work on those things, and so we should be able to move forward with the process. So hopefully we'll be able to get that recruitment out either this month or the 1st of January.
Thank you. Any other staff updates that you want to provide?
Staff updates. So right now we're in the process of hiring the Parks Director. Brought Mike Griggs over to be the Deputy City Manager. That created a vacancy for a Parks Director. So we'll do those interviews on the 14th of this month. So hopefully, maybe not by the next meeting, but by the meeting in January, we'll be able to have another process where we have another oath being taken by a new director.
And is that your final major hire?
That will be my final major hire.
All right, nice.
And so no one's allowed to retire for the next 5 years.
Okay. Any other comments from staff? Nancy, anything?
You know, the only thing I might update you on is that we do know we're getting lots of questions about Amendment 3 and implementation of Amendment 3. You will have on your next council agenda introduction, first reading for the 3% sales tax that was authorized by Amendment 3. Planning Commission is starting to look at rolling in. There were 3 types of, what Amendment 3 did was it took medical marijuana and then added 2 additional types of marijuana businesses. So you have medical marijuana facilities, you have the comprehensive facilities and the micro-business facilities. The comprehensive is basically a combination of medical and adult use, or some people call it recreational marijuana, but it is for persons who are over the age of 21. And so those licenses and applications for the comprehensive start rolling out within the next 60 days. And then following that, the timeline for the micro business, which is purely the adult use recreational, those don't get implemented for another 18 months in essence, and kind of just from a very high level. So we're less worried about those regulations. It's converting the medical marijuana to the comprehensive that the Planning Commission is going to start looking at. So you'll start hearing some conversation about that. And then, of course, internally, because recreational has the potential to become effective 60 days from now, we will be revising internally the HR policies as well as city code provisions. So all that is coming.
Thank you
Rest
for that
assured,
update.
It's coming very quickly.
Appreciate that update. Any other comments from staff? Sheila, anything? All right. I'm going to move to adjourn, or adjourn us.
10 o'clock.
Adjourn us. I don't know what that